and I got a right to bear arms. And the state is pushing all the arm companies out of here
Yeah.
for some reason. I don't have a clue, but they're not taking my rifles away from me.
Yeah.
Sometimes is multi-generational. There's 4, 5, 6 generations of the same family that have worked there.
Yeah.
You can go anywhere in the world, and I'd tell that to the CEO's face. You can go anywhere you want in the world, but you're never going to find the dedication and the knowledge and the skill set that comes out of that place every day.
No.
One of the biggest ways that you can describe, in my mind, what's happened at Remington is nothing more than corporate greed. They've been sold several times. They bankruptcied several times. The ones who have purchased it really didn't know anything about manufacturing at all, much less manufacturing quality firearms.
Today we're doing something real special. We're in the town of Ilion, New York, at the Remington Arms Company, as you can see in the background. As a lot of you folks know, this plant is closing after 208 years. This year will mark 208 years that Remington has been in Ilion, New York. Sad day. We're going to interview a bunch of folks, including the mayor. I'm going to speak with some local folks. And unlike mainstream media, I want this story to be about the people of the town and really getting their voice out there, right? Not just one or two little quotes in an article and posting their picture all over the place, but hear from the folks directly and how it's impacted this blue collar community that, when you folks think of New York, nobody thinks about rural America, right? A lot of folks, you hear the words New York, you think of New York City, you think of Wall Street and all these other areas, but when you come up to a town like Ilion, New York, where Remington Arms started back in the 1800s, it's no different than some of rural Texas, West Virginia. It's a real community feel out here, and you folks will see that as we go through the town. We're here in the village of Ilion with Mayor Stevens. We're going to let Mayor Stevens talk about Remington moving down to Georgia. With that being said, Mayor Stevens, can you give us a little background on your history with the town?
Yeah. Good morning. Thank you for first of all, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Still trying to get a positive message out there, but yeah, I was born and raised here. It'll be 58 years in May,
Wow.
and that facility has been here for 208 years.
Yeah.
Myself personally, I'm married. I raised 2 children here. I obviously still live here.
Yeah.
My wife's a retired school teacher. My daughter actually lives in the town next to us, the village next to us, Frankfurt, and my son is a firefighter paramedic in Charlotte, North Carolina. But I did raise both my kids here. They both went to school here. My wife actually taught school here.
Awesome.
And so yeah, it's you know, I have a sister and two brothers that were raised by my dad who worked, and my mom and dad. My dad worked the only provider for the family, and he worked at Remington.
Wow.
You know, walked to work every day, carried his lunch pail.
Yeah.
Ironically funny, I just they retired up north, and we just sold their home. They're going to come back down here for
Oh wow.
their later years, and I found his lunch pail,
Oh wow.
and I grabbed it. I said, "That's not going anywhere. Someday I'll use that for something good."
How long did he work at Remington? He has a lot.
Yeah, he had a little over 37 years there.
That's
He
amazing.
started as an electrician and worked his way up to a senior lab tech. So
Wow.
the last 25 plus years, he had a really good job. He got to shoot guns all day, test lab, and he really enjoyed that part of it. And I don't blame him.
That's awesome. And like Mayor Stevens said, Remington, a lot of folks, I don't know if they know, has been up here for over 200 years. So I think we're going to hear a lot of these stories.
208 would be
that's
this year,
amazing.
1816 to now.
It's really amazing.
Yeah.
You know, being that you have such a history with the village, I know we spoke earlier off camera, but there's got to be a tremendous personal connection. And being the mayor of a village of such a tight knit community, I'm
Yeah.
sure stuff weighs pretty heavy.
Well,
on you.
it does. You know, people ask me why you're crazy. What do you get into this stuff for? And I simply say it's just for the love of my hometown. You know, I've never known anywhere else.
Yeah.
I've always said that I'm not a politician.
Yeah.
You know, people say, "Oh, no, I hold an elected office."
Yeah.
I'm not a party guy. I mean, I'm a registered Republican,
Yeah.
just because when I went to work at the county, that's what you had to be. I don't follow that Republican, Democrat. I just don't follow that.
Yeah.
I don't have the time. I truly don't. You know, we're a village of about 7,800 now, and it's declined over the last few years.
Yeah. And I think folks, you know, when they think of New York, I feel like a lot of folks, you know, they think of New York City and they don't
Mhm.
think of these villages, whether they're up north, out west, whatever it is. New York is a big state, and folks don't realize the community, and it's really no difference than some of these places in West Virginia, some of these places in Texas. It's
Right.
a real community feel.
It is, and we're proud of that. We're you know, I've always said we're blue collar people here.
Yeah.
You know, we're used to rolling up our sleeves and getting down in the mud and getting dirty and hardworking, and our work ethic here. I've said this before. I'll say it again. There's nobody in the world that's going to replace the workers that are getting laid off at that plant.
That's a
They
fact.
have the knowledge, the skill, and the work ethic in that plant.
Yeah.
Sometimes as multi-generational. There's 4, 5, 6 generations of the same family that have worked there.
Yeah.
You can go anywhere in the world, and I'd tell that to the CEO's face. You can go anywhere you want in the world, but you're never going to find the dedication and the knowledge and the skill set that comes out of that place every day.
No, and that's why I think it's hitting so hard with folks. And you mentioned it earlier, and obviously, you know, I've been keeping track of this story. One of the reasons I'm here, but like you said, I think the impact on the people personally is even more than what it's going to be financially.
Yeah. What I said earlier was the historical and the nostalgic loss that we're going to have is equal to, if not greater than, the financial loss.
Yeah.
You know, the financial loss is huge. You know, overall loss to this community is probably right close to $1 million.
Wow.
And between sales tax or property tax revenue, electric sales, because we have our own electric department here in the village. They use our electricity,
which is huge. I mean, this plant is,
it's
like you said,
they were
it's on
using
34 acres.
$700,000 of electricity a year that's gone.
Wow.
That we won't sell to them. But again, back to the history, you know, I've said it on a couple of places. You're never Ilion and Remington. Ilion is Remington. Remington is Ilion. I've said that many, many, many times. But we are always going to be synonymous. We're always going to be gathered and joined at the hip.
Yeah.
Because no matter where you take the name, you can't erase history.
No.
You can't do it. They're always, you go anywhere right now in the world and say, you know, I live in Ilion, New York, home of Remington Arms. And they're like, oh, yeah. They make that instant connection.
Yeah. They
do. And they always will. Now you're going to say, oh, I work for Remington in LaGrange, Georgia. And they're going to go, huh?
No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You know, and look, it was a business decision from the company. I get that. I really do. And I might be getting ahead of myself with what you're going to ask.
No, this is good.
But, you know, from the business side of things, I can't comment on that because I don't run their business.
Yeah.
I run this business. They've said that the plant is inefficient. I understand that because most manufacturers nowadays want a one single story, bring the raw material in one end, build the product in the factory, and come out the other side, in this case, with a new firearm.
Yeah.
So it's in and out all on the same floor. I understand that. But the building is not in bad shape. We've toured the building, myself and some other elected officials and our IDA and the realtor that listed it and plant manager. We all toured. We were there 6 hours.
Wow.
To walk through that facility. My hips were screaming when I was done. I thought I walked through Disney World.
And it is a huge facility.
It's huge.
Yeah.
It's 1.1 million square feet on 34 acres in the middle of the village. But it's not in bad shape.
No.
Now, what we're doing now is trying to work with Remington to help succeed. I don't know what the right word is.
Yeah.
To reuse, repurpose that facility. Now, personally, I don't care if it's one big company or 20 or 25 smaller companies, as long as it's being utilized.
Yeah.
The village was basically built around that. So here lies the facility, which was built right along the old Erie Canal.
Yeah.
Back in the 1816s, 1915, 16, 17, 18 is when most of the newer structures that are there that you see, that's when those were built. But they were still right along the canal. So, and then everybody built from there out, and that's how the village became the village.
I'm glad you did go this route because I wanted to focus on some of this stuff. Like you mentioned, I think everyone has their own opinion on why Remington's moving. And, from what I've been reading, it seems like once the actual Remington family kind of sold the company, seems over the last 10, 20 years, you had the private equity firms and, these are people.
Dufold bought it many, many, many years ago. And it was fine then.
Yeah.
When Dufold, the company Dufold owned, or
DuPont.
not DuPont.
Yep.
Dufold, DuPont owned it. It was great.
Yeah.
And that's who my dad worked for most of the years he was there. Well, then they got out of it and sold it to Clinton Dublier and some investment firm, and it's just changed so many times from then. Well, up until until DuPont got out of it, things were very good.
Yeah.
There was always talk. Like I said, my dad started there in 1972. Always talk. Oh, Remington's done. They're leaving.
Yeah.
They've tried. They tried to go to Kentucky. They did move certain lines to Kentucky. They came back. They tried to go to Alabama a few years ago. Never came back.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I think this time when they leave, if they don't succeed in Georgia, Remington brand is gone.
I agree with that.
They won't come back here because everything will be out of that factory. They're not going to come back to this facility and retool it.
Yeah.
Because it'll all be empty. They've already got all their machinery on a website for auction, and it's going to be empty. So if they don't succeed down south, Remington is no more. That's just my feeling. I've never heard any. I have nothing to back that up. That's just a gut feeling.
Yeah.
So, but that's just how I feel because they've tried moving away.
It seems like
and they can't. Back to my workforce statement. They can't find the people that work like our people do here and have the knowledge of what they're doing.
No, and just driving through the town, it reminded me of almost like an old coal mining town or steel workers. Like you see, you can look at folks and just see that these are hard-working folks, and like this is what America's built on.
Absolutely,
I mean, this is it's bigger than hear about Ilion and Remington, but it's an American story. And that's what I really want to drive home to the people. These are real people that make a difference, and anyone who watches my channel knows I'm closer to the city. Obviously getting tired of the city life, but you don't have that personal feeling, that passion. People, are more, I always say, you look at the folks walking around New York City, they're like robots. No one even looks up at the sky to appreciate anything. You're just going to work. It's all about
they're going
money.
from A to B.
Going from A to B, and that's
B
it.
to B.
It's to me, it's a waste of
it. To your point, Jeff, that and I busted your chops a little earlier about it because you said you were moving upstate, and I said, well, is it upstate? Like to you, upstate is Orange County choppers, Westchester County, or upstate to us is up here.
Yeah.
And we're actually not even upstate. We're central New York.
That's wild.
Upstate is anything south of Albany to the folks in the city or on Long Island, that's upstate.
Yeah. What's in them? You talk to folks in the Bronx, and White Plains is upstate.
Yeah, exactly.
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 Yep.
So now we're going upstate for the weekend. So,
Yeah.
so you're going to White Plains, right? And I have many, many friends on Long Island through the fire service.
Yeah.
And even there's even a disconnect between those folks and the city.
It is.
And many of them work in the city.
It is.
But then they come home to the island.
Yeah.
And that's just where they work.
Yeah.
They have no other connection other than their employment there. And that's quite honestly, people have asked me, are they leaving because of the state politics? There might be a little bit of truth to that, but I honestly think that that's a small part of their reason. People are, we have we're definitely a pro Second Amendment area, obviously.
Yeah.
We have a lot of folks that are really, really stringent Second Amendment folks, and I get that,
Yeah.
And that's their first thought is, well, they're leaving because the state forced them out. Yeah, that might be a little bit of it, but I think the major component is it's just a business decision that the company that the owners of the company just don't feel that this is the place for them to be.
Yeah.
And again, I can't comment on that because I don't run their business.
No.
Now,
and it's sad because you wonder if I personally think Remington, if once these private equity firms or whatever it is, investment
Mhm.
firms take over these things, a lot of these companies, I feel like they lose the personal.
they do.
And it does,
Absolutely.
like exactly what you said. It becomes a business decision
Absolutely.
and less about the people.
Yeah, yeah. And I can honestly tell you obviously the whole thing bothers me.
Yeah.
But what bothers me the most is the lack of communication from that owners group to us as a village. I found out they were leaving from the news media.
That's
And I have a very good relationship with our local media. So one of the reporters, she called me and she says, "Hey, Mayor, we're in Herkimer. Can we stop by for a comment?" Sure, but what do you want me to comment on? She says, "We just need a comment from you." I says, "About what?" And she says, "Oh no, you don't know." And I was like, "No, what?" She says, "Remington just announced they're leaving March 4th. She says, "I feel like I just told somebody their father died." I says, "Well, I feel like the father." And I was like, "Geez, thanks for the heads up." You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's got to be like a gut punch.
It was. Yeah. It was even worse. It's like somebody punched me in the mouth. And they've had, and I've tried to have some communication with them to find out, okay, what are your plans? What are you going to do? You still own the building.
Yeah.
So are you still going to pay your taxes? Are you going to maintain, something as simple as mowing the lawn?
Yeah. It's just common courtesy.
Yeah.
To say, once again, this this town.
Yeah. And I've got nothing.
Village.
Yeah. But, their final reply was, "When we know, you'll know."
And meanwhile, they know. We all know that these folks
know
know
what's
behind
going
the scenes.
on.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
know.
They have.
Going back, I just want to go back to your history, and like you said, your father, 37 years at the plant. Are there any stories or memories, whether they're funny, whatever it is, that maybe people don't know about Remington or they don't hear in by mainstream media?
The memories are they used to be very employee oriented. Every summer they had an employee picnic.
Wow.
At Caroga Lake, which is and back then it used to be a little small Sherman's amusement park, and they had a carousel and a Ferris wheel and little bumper cars and games, and everybody's kids were there and we were all there, and they would have I won a bike there one year on a
That's
bike
awesome.
raffle, so that those are things that, to your point, the personal touch, you know, that they used to do for their employees.
Yeah, it's that middle America feel. I
yeah,
hate to say middle
yeah.
America
No,
because
but-
we're not middle America, but
We're close.
Yeah.
It's the same. You're spot on with your comparison. That was always something we looked forward to, and especially with, like I said, there was 4 of us kids.
Yeah.
And my dad was the only worker. My mom stayed home to raise us. So that was kind of a treat for us.
Yeah.
I say nowadays that I raised my kids and they're a little bit spoiled because I wanted them to have more than I had. So I got my first car that I paid for when I was in college.
Yeah.
My kids drove a car to high school.
Times are different.
My granddaughter, she's got 4-wheelers and she's 5 years old and and it's like, and that's a good thing, but I think that's also what's hurting. This social media stuff too is,
well, technology as a
crazy.
whole,
Yeah. Yep.
it's to me, it's the downfall of society. What are you hearing from the people directly? I know as New Yorkers, we're resilient, you know.
Yeah, you're right there. Somebody asked me in a different interview, if there was anger, were people angry? No, I haven't heard a lot of anger. I've heard a lot of disappointment.
Yeah.
And then obviously the worry. What are we going to do? And my reply to them is, look, you need to stay positive. We're working hard. You folks can't see it, but over there is a board in the middle of that board in big green letters. It says Remington with stars around it.
Yeah.
Because that's what I focus on every day.
And for you folks, I don't know, maybe we could take a
You
shot.
can, yeah, whatever you want to do.
And he's busy. You can see on this board what these folks are doing, and
if you
right
take
in the
a
middle.
picture of that one, that used to be on this completed, and that's empty. But if you pan down to the paper taped to it, that's everything we've done in the last year and almost 2 years.
Yeah, look at this, folks. I mean, these guys, they're not just standing by idly, letting things happen. And like I said, as New Yorkers, we're very resilient. We move forward. Whatever this story is going to turn out to be, the village of Ilion is going to.
We're going to come out on the right side.
Absolutely,
of this.
absolutely. And you know what? Times like this, you might not see it now, but this is what makes people strong. People in this town are already strong. I walked around last night, and we're going to meet some other folks later on. But you guys out there are going to see some of the real blue collared hard workers that not only help the village of Ilion, but built. I'm going to bring it right back to America. I mean, these are folks that are helping build this country.
We're not afraid to go into the store dirty.
Yeah.
I'm not a suit and tie guy.
I think
really
people
not.
respect the realness and just,
I've said before that me being me gets me reelected.
Yeah.
But eventually that'll keep me from getting reelected because people will get sick of the honesty.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's just the way I am. I'm too old and beat up to change.
Well, I love it. We mentioned too, and I know we spoke about, I think it's numerous reasons, like you said, right? You do get the anti-2A, right? New York is definitely not the most friendly, but that's another thing I think there's some confusion on, where you're right. Towns like this are very 2A friendly.
I've made one negative comment out of all this, and that was the night that I found out, and I was doing a live interview for our local TV station with Jolene is her name. Jolene Ferris is the reporter that called me.
Interesting.
And she came down and we talked right over in front of the Remington sign. And I made one negative comment, and I said the majority in Albany is doing a happy dance right now.
Yeah.
And I firmly believe that they were, because they got what they wanted.
Yeah.
That's the only negative thing I've said, and that's the only negative thing I will say.
Yeah.
Because they know how I feel. They know.
Yeah.
And if they don't know, then their head's in the sand.
And another thing that goes back, I think even at a minimum to the SAFE Act, if not even before that, but a lot of other states have been trying to pry them out of here also, that I've read about. I mean, you go back 10 years and you had 5 states like really trying to take Remington out of here. So, it's nothing new. I don't want to say it's unfair, but, some of these other states, they try to take advantage also, I think, of.
Oh, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Yep.
Yeah. And I had, during the SAFE Act, to your point, when they were actively recruiting,
that's the exact term.
I've had email conversations with, what are you doing? You don't do this.
Yeah.
You're stabbing me in the back.
Yeah.
We're fighting hard to keep, and I understand they're fighting to get something, but don't backdoor us to get that. That's not cool.
No. And especially something so personal. I mean, this is not,
so historical and so ingrained in our community, and you're trying to pry that away with promises of brand new machines and brand new facilities and lower this and lower that. And, I've told other mayors and state reps in other states, no, don't do that. That's not cool.
No. To me, it's actually, and these are my words, not Mayor Stevens, but to me, it's sleazy, because while these deals and outreaches go on behind the scenes, I'm pretty sure none of these mayors tried talking to the community about, hey, if we're able to pull Remington, this is what we're going to do to help you folks. Was probably never part of the conversation.
Nope.
So,
not even a small part.
No. And that's really disappointing.
Yeah, it is.
This is a story that should hit home to all of us, because it can happen to any community.
And it has before. We're not unique in this issue. I've leaned heavily on Senator Joe Griffo, who was the mayor of the city of Rome as a younger man when the federal government shut down Griffiths Air Force Base.
Yeah.
You know, he lost tens of thousands of people.
Yeah.
They've repurposed that. They've come back. So that's you
That's
know,
the
that's how
resilience.
I think.
Yeah.
You know, that's why I call him and say, Senator, you know, where am I at here? You know, I've never handled anything. I'm a big dumb fireman. You know, uh, give me a hose and blah, blah, you know, go inside, put the fire out, and come back out.
Yeah.
But you know,
But that's the folks though that make the difference. It's the hard workers. You know, you don't have. It's not about the big titles and
No.
everything else, like you said. It's
No.
it's the blue collar.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because the title thing, I'm not a title guy.
Me either.
You know, nobody in here calls me mayor during the day.
Yeah.
You know, some of them do just out of habit, but you know,
Well, you didn't
there's
come
obviously
across-
a time for
Yeah.
that. You know, if you're out in a political setting, I guess. But I'm just John. You know, I've dealt with. I'm a cancer survivor, so you know, I lost my right kidney in 2011 to
Oh, wow.
job-related cancer.
Oh wow.
So that's another one of those. You know, you just it never really hit me.
Yeah.
You know, it's just okay. Take it out, send me home, and get
Until-
on with life. You
Yeah.
know. So, but that's again that just goes back to how we do things around here.
Yeah.
You know, one of my deputy fire chiefs now is battling pancreatic cancer, and he's gonna be fine.
That's awesome.
He's you know, and he's a year older than I am, and he's got 30 plus years on the fire department,
Wow.
and all he wants to do is get better and come back to work.
Wow. It's a village of fighters. I mean, it
Absolutely.
really.
Yep.
It really is.
Yep.
And once again, not to keep saying it, but this is what built the country. Is
Yeah.
people like this.
Yep.
John, is there anything that I didn't bring up today? Anything I didn't cover that you want to? You know, once again, this isn't about me or my channel.
No,
it's
I
really
think-
about you
I think
folks.
I think we did good. It's nice to just sit and talk back and forth, other than, you know,
Yeah.
you know, somebody's got a set agenda that they want to talk about. It's refreshing to just sit back and be able to talk.
Yeah.
I think we covered a lot. I think you've got the right point across. Is, you know, this is what we do.
Yeah.
You know, this is what America's all about. You know, there's a sign out front of that facility that says America's oldest gun maker. That's true until
Yeah.
March 4th,
Yeah. Yeah.
at least in Ilion.
Yeah.
Now they'll continue to make firearms, but it won't be here. You know, that's, again, that goes back to the historical and the nostalgia is, you know, you take out an 870 shotgun and it says right in the barrel, Ilion, New York.
Yeah.
That's not going to be there anymore.
No.
That's the toughest part.
Yeah.
That really is for me. Take aside put aside the financial aspect. That's the part that I don't like.
No. And you know, I mean, you know, it is. It's like I've said, it's touching. It's not. These are not stories that you hear about.
Guarantee you one thing: there will never be anything that says Remington other than Ilion in my gun safe. Because if I see something in Walmart that says LaGrange, Georgia, they can keep it.
I agree with you.
They can keep it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. Well, I'll tell you, I really appreciate your time. I appreciate what you're doing, and you know, it's my first time up here. It won't be my last. Like I said, I'd love to.
You're
come
welcome
up and do a
anytime.
follow-up.
You got my number.
Yeah.
You got my email. Yeah, shoot
Yeah.
me on. Be happy to have you again.
You know, right across the street from Remington. Let me just give you a quick shot, and then we'll pan it back. But you know, speaking with Charlie, I actually ran into him last night. I kind of just walked into the American Legion post 920. These guys didn't know who I was, but super friendly. Told me to come back today. Their story. So, Charlie, if you just want to give a little background, you know, who you are and what's your history with the town.
My real name is Charlie Brown. That's, you know, and everybody knows me because of my name. But I'm the commander here at the American Legion in Ilion. And Remington Arms is right across the street. And they've been around for over 200 years. I believe in the second. And I got a right to bear arms. And the state is pushing all the arm companies out of here.
Yeah.
For some reason. I don't have a clue, but they're not taking my rifles away from me.
Yeah.
And so I'm out here getting things set up because I'm trying to help all the employees because they don't have a future anymore.
No.
And so we're gonna help. We're gonna have this open Monday, open house, and we got food. So if they ever need it, you know what I'm saying, come on in and get it.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And that's what it's about, Charlie. You look at what's going on in this state, in similar states. And like you said, I love the hat. I showed you my license plate. Anyone who watches my channel knows I'm a big Second Amendment guy. And I open up every video with welcome to the communist state of New York. I'll say one thing about the folks that I have met so far is their resiliency and just the hard blue collar work.
Just barely survived because of Remington Arms. Not 100%, but a good portion of it.
Yeah.
And now they're making it so that there's no employees anymore here. So the job situation here in the Valley is going to be tough.
It is.
And so we're going to be out here helping everybody we can.
And just over the years, if you don't mind me asking, how long have you been here? I'm sure in its heyday, much different times than we've seen now.
Right. Like back in 78, I started at Remington Arms, and I worked there until 1984.
Wow.
So I've been around for 67 years. And I used to go through, there used to be the main street in between both sides of the Remington. And they blocked that off eventually. But they used to go between, and we used to go walking back and forth back there. And it was nice.
Yeah.
But nowadays it's all politician.
Yeah.
And that's a shame because it's ruining the Valley here.
It is. It is. And like you said, it's not just Remington. Over the years, Storm Ruger left.
Union Tools left.
Yeah. Smith & Wesson, I think, just moved to Tennessee. I mean, not a New York company, but still a Northeast.
They're moving out of the state of New York because of the taxes, because of the law, because somebody got shot. It's not the weapon that killed it. It's not the weapon that killed it. It's the person that pulled the trigger.
Correct.
So why are Remington Arms getting a lawsuit? And don't get me wrong. I mean, I feel bad for the family. But come on, it's not the guns that did it.
Yeah.
It's just to the point where now the government made it so that we can't even discipline our kids.
Yeah.
But we're going to be held responsible for them?
Yeah, it's bullshit.
That's wrong.
Yeah. You brought up a good point, right? Because, yes, what happened in Sandy Hook, one of the biggest tragedies in America. Nobody doubts that. But to hold Remington financially responsible, to me, was sickening. And, you don't see when a drunk driver kills someone, you don't see Honda being sued for $80 million.
That's
you
right.
see that drunk driver going to jail.
That's right.
And, it's really sick. And you're right. It has become a political circus. Charlie, is there anything that I didn't bring up or anything that you want to just leave it off with? Any other thoughts?
I wish Remington Arms would consider and come back. But it's up to the state to change the law.
Yeah. And
they're not going to do it unless they change the law. Because whatever gun comes out of that, they're going to be responsible. And it's not right.
No, it's not. It's not. Well, folks, you heard it here from Charlie. Also, I just want to show where he's from. Ilion, American Legion. Like he said, these folks are doing a lot tomorrow. They're doing a lot tomorrow. When is it? Monday, actually. Is it tomorrow or Monday? You're going to have some folks from the actual plant come down?
Yes. The matter of fact, the main road here is going to be shut down for an hour for all the employees that want to come in and just say goodbye. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. It's
So that's why we're going to have an open house tomorrow for them.
Unbelievable. Well, Charlie, I want to really thank you for your time today. Keep doing what you're doing, helping folks out in the community. And we're here today with a great American, guys.
God bless you.
Hey, guys, we're at Franco's Pizza in Ilion. And I was referred to Franco by a bunch of local folks. Dan inside, we're going to speak with Dan, but from what I hear, these folks actually let kids come in, they feed some of the kids, they let them do their homework. It's basically a place to stay. It's been around in the community for a long time, and obviously also feeling the impacts of Remington leaving. Like I said, I've heard from Franco's from numerous folks. Local pizza shop has been around a long time, and I'm sure will continue to do well even through these times. that we're in right now. So we're here with Dan with Franco's Pizza. And Dan, what are your thoughts? I know it's probably impacted Franco's a little bit, but we want to hear it from you.
Yeah, it definitely has. You know, it's been a lot to this community for a long time. Everyone has somebody in their families or somebody that they know that have either worked there or they have done business there. I mean, it's been here for 200 years, you know. So just to be gone like that, it's pretty crazy. You know, we'll miss all our local customers that order all the time. You know, and we're trying to do the best we can to help them out wherever we can. So, you know, but it's a big impact to this area. We're a small village, and Remington was our lifeline for a long time, and now it's gone. So, you know, like everything else, we're gonna move on in life and we're gonna figure it out, but it just sucks that we have to even do that, you know.
Well, Dan, I really appreciate it. He's super busy. Like he said, this is a small business and a small community, but I'm confident, like everyone else in the town of Ilion, these folks are strong. They're going to overcome.
Absolutely.
And in the meantime, I'm going to get a few slices, folks, and
Sounds
check
good.
out how the pizza is. It smells awesome.
Oh, perfect.
Dan, thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Perfect. Dan gave us some of his homemade banana cheesecake. Going to go ahead and give this a try. Wow. Wow. That is really, really good. You know, another local business really being affected by Remington. Dan off camera was telling me they take kids in here, they have them do their homework, they feed them. Really doing amazing things for a small community. And like you said, obviously he's being affected by it. This homemade cheesecake is awesome. And that's what it's all about. It's a small community feel. And these folks will overcome, but anyone out there, get down to Dan's, get down to Franco's. Dan's doing some really amazing things. You can see it's busy. I can't wait to try the pizza. Really cool in here. It's got that old school feel, like a lot of this town does. Hey, we're here with Mary today. Mary has, to say, a lot of history in the region, not only with Remington, but with Ilion, with the town we're in now. I'm just going to open it up to Mary, and if you just want to give us background on really your family history with Remington and with this region.
Sure. My dad, who was John Fitzer, he was a model maker in Remington Arms. He ended up there. He was from Ilion, but was in the Navy. Actually, was discharged early in the Navy because he invented something that was very important to the Navy. And they let him out and sent him to Watervliet Arsenal. And our family has no idea what that was, but it was something to do with the war. So he then went to work in Remington Arms. Was, as I said, a model maker. Could make. We believe he actually made the first nylon 66, which is one of Remington's more famous guns. My brother actually owns two white nylon 66s, which people don't think exist.
Wow.
But my father made them for parade guns for the Ilion Fire Department.
Wow.
And then there's also a mystery yellow nylon 66 that a lot of people don't know about. And I have a cousin that owns that, but that's another story. My oldest brother went to work in Remington when he got out of school. He was worked his way through school at the same time he was working at Remington and was an engineer and retired from there. As far as Quick Cut is concerned, my Bill Carter was also a model maker. He had come across the idea of the Quick Cut food chopper and started making them part time in his house and in his garage while working at Remington. And when Mr. Carter aged out and wanted to get rid of the business, he insisted that my father buy it from him. So he did. And that was around 1968, I think. My dad retired in 72. I went to college and graduated in 72. And my father told me that I better get down here to work until I found a job.
Love it.
So here I am. And so if anybody's got a job, I'm still looking. Yeah.
And she, before, we were speaking behind the scenes, and Mary gave me a tour of the facility, which, by the way, is much bigger than what I expected pulling up. We're going to have to come back up here. I was telling Mary it'd be a disservice to come up here and just talk about Remington and only a small portion about what she does, but we got to come back up here, folks, because she has a manufacturing facility up here that, just like Remington, it's been around for a long time, and there's a lot of history here. We're going to dig into a lot of that, but long story short, we're going to come up and we're going to do a full series. Because, like I said, what is it 100 years old? This, or is it close to what I think?
I'm going to go into the 80s years old.
Okay.
We've been in this facility since 1955.
It's amazing.
So that's and pride ourselves on an American-made product, and I try to stay in close touch with other facilities around here that are also proud to make American-made products. And it's been kind of a movement lately for people to search that out, but it's also a movement for people to buy everything online, and you're not really sure what you're getting or where it's from.
That's great. And Mary, you've lived this firsthand with Remington.
Yeah.
Even though you're in Mohawk now, you have tremendous history with Ilion, which, for you folks that don't know, it's literally 3-4 minutes away. Number one, what are your thoughts? Obviously, it's sad times, right?
Yes.
But I think the folks would like to hear from you.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on why we're in the position we're in with Remington, and how is it impacting you personally?
Well, I think one of the biggest ways that you can describe, in my mind, what's happened at Remington is nothing more than corporate greed. They've been sold several times. They bankruptcied several times. The ones who have purchased it really didn't know anything about manufacturing at all, much less manufacturing quality firearms. The New York State is not friendly, as we all know, to firearms. It's a real hardship around here. I mean, you're talking about a factory that used to shut down the first week of hunting season, and
That's
give
amazing.
paid vacation. There's my business has for years now, even when my father owned it, our workforce are retired people. That's who works here. We work 3 days a week, and so we've always relied on Remington retirees because they know they have the work ethic, they know how to solve problems, they know how to run machinery, they take pride in their work, and there's families there that have worked there for 5 generations. There's uh, one guy that used to work for me when he was younger, because when they had a big layoff back in the 80s, his father came. His father was a worker. He didn't sit around and collect. He came down here and knocked on the door and asked my dad for a job. And when he got called back to Remington, he went back nights and worked here days.
Oh.
And then he brought his son in and taught his son how to work here. And that son now has worked at Remington for years. His wife works at Remington. His mother worked at Remington. His father worked at Remington. His daughter works at Remington. And now that legacy is just gone, with people really not caring anywheres.
Yeah, and it's sad because it's a reoccurring theme, and you brought up the work ethic, and you just don't see that nowadays. You see more people wanting a handout than actually, you guys know I'm a straight talker, but really getting off their ass and making something. And a lot of people you talk with up here, they've made stuff with their lives. They've built companies, they've built villages, they've built towns. And yes, we've spoke about the financial aspect, and another reoccurring thing throughout this video, the toll is what's really
Mhm.
affecting people, because like you said, it's generations,
Mhm.
and it's not too many places anymore you go in life and have a passion
Right.
and pride in what you do on a daily
You know,
basis.
they've always had a lot of employees that are actually farmers, and we all know how hard it is for farmers to survive, you know, in today's economy. And these were guys who would farm during the day and work at Remington on the second shift or the third shift, which they haven't had a third shift in a long time. But you know, it's not just always that job. It affects a lot of other jobs. It's going to affect the school districts. It's going to affect, you know, all the charities that are around here, because now you're not going to have people that can contribute to charities. They're going to be asking for things from the charity. Excuse me. So it's going to be sad. I think that you would have a hard time, and I know that you've talked to some people, you'd have a hard time finding anybody that's surprised this happened.
I I agree with you. And you know, one of the things when I was speaking with the mayor that I found was real shady, and we'll get into a few things, is states have been trying to pry Remington away from New York for over a decade. And they haven't, as they've been trying to pry Remington, they haven't tried helping the community.
Right.
It's one thing when you try to take a business out of a community and you try to supplement it with something. It doesn't make it right. It's still a tremendous loss. But you know, the fact that nobody's even communicating with folks, and I want to talk about what we were just talking about with the museum that was at Remington.
Yeah.
What are you hearing about the museum?
Well,
Just your own words.
there's a lot of disputing, you know, people say this, people say that. I would be very surprised if anything was left in that museum, if there was anything in there of value. I'd be very surprised. There's a lot of artifacts in there that were loaned to that museum, to Remington, by, you know, someone's grandfather had a special gun and loaned it. Um, the Ilion, you know, the typewriter was invented in Ilion, in a division of Remington. There were old typewriters in there. The last time I was in the museum, which was probably, oh, I would say 7 or 8 years ago, I was actually in the museum. They had running videos on the whole story of the Remingtons, on all of the history, on starting in the forge, up in, you know, there were books, there were knives, there were, you know, there was everything in there. And where is it now? Nobody knows. The museum's been locked up for probably, oh, 4 years, anyways, at least. They had a huge gift shop in there with all kinds of Remington stuff that you had to go through the museum to get to the gift shop. And that whole building has just been shuttered. You know, I mean, it was one of the main entrances, but it has been metal doors right across those doors for years now.
It's really, you know, with everything going on, it's
Mhm.
sad enough. But when I heard about the museum and just being emptied out and nobody knowing where any of these items are, um, it's disgusting, to be honest with you. I know that you said, I mean, there's people in the town, in the village, that lent the museum
Yeah.
some of this stuff, and they don't
And
know where it is.
well, and you know that those artifacts don't mean anything to the people who own it.
No.
They're just corporate people. But did they, you know, or could someone open the doors and everything's in there? Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
You know?
But the fact that there's no
Yeah.
communication
Right.
is to
You know,
disservice.
we talked about, you know, historically the big sign out in front of Remington, that for my entire life there were safety slogans on there. There were, you know, an event on there. There was how many days without an accident on there. There hasn't been one word on that sign in probably 3 or 4 years.
Wow.
You know, that's that lack of not even have a nice day. You know.
Yeah. It's been
Yeah.
feels like over the last several years it's been
Yeah.
a downward effect. Now, Remington used to have a, you know, a lot of you folks know there's only 250, 300 employees that were left. And I don't mean to say only, that's still a very significant number of
Mhm.
people being laid off. But Remington over the years, I think, how many folks were there, did you say at one point?
Oh, I believe there was 10,000
Yeah,
years ago,
yeah.
you know, during wartime. And you know, my mother actually worked in Remington for a while during the war, because during the war, women had to go into the factories, you know.
Yeah.
And so there was, you know, there's people that met and got married in there. There's people, you know, all kinds of history. And I know that Ilion's not unique and Remington's not unique. That this has happened to other communities. It's sad. It's a hard hit,
Mhm.
but you know, you mentioned they've been wooed to other states. Um, Kentucky at one time, Alabama at one time, you know, now Georgia. Their headquarters has been in North Carolina. For, you know, if someone called customer service, they were talking to North Carolina.
Yeah.
They weren't talking to Ilion. You know, um, you know, people used to be able to take their guns in there to the custom. The custom shop was unbelievable. I don't know if you've heard much about the custom shop.
I did, and you know, this might be too where in the gun community, a lot of people. You take the Marlin, for example, and I own a Marlin. With New York, where I am, downstate, it's probably one of the toughest areas in the state
Mhm.
from a Second Amendment perspective. But anyway, my Marlin is made by Ruger, and you hear rumors in the gun community over the years that Remington's quality went down over the years.
Mm-hmm.
And now, after hearing these stories, you're like, wow, how could it? No
Mm-hmm.
wonder it went down. You have a dramatically reduced workforce.
Mm-hmm.
You have owners that probably could care less about the actual product compared to profits.
Right.
Um, so that says something too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just about
Yeah.
where they are. What I guess, what are your thoughts? I know, folks, it does say one thing about this region: the people of Ilion, the people of the Mohawk Valley,
Mm-hmm.
Remington over the years, right? Even though they're moving now, they had their financial troubles over the
Yeah.
years. The people have always stayed strong, I feel like, in this
Mm-hmm.
community, regardless what's thrown at them.
They, you know, there's so many things in New York that affect business. You know, I know that a business like mine has a really hard time with these minimum wage requirements. And, you know, the employees that I have, they're retired. They're collecting a pension, they're collecting the social security. They really don't want any more money,
Yeah.
you know, um, which sounds a little strange, but for these people, I know that at one point in time when Remington shut down for a while and they opened back up, they were asking people to come in and work for minimum wage.
Yeah.
Well, you're not going to get highly skilled, you know, 30-year-olds to, or you know, it's just not going to be worth their time.
Yeah.
They can go work at Dunkin' Donuts and make the same amount of money.
Yeah.
Um, and Remington's history was the people that were there were now training the new people. So if the people aren't there to train the new people, you know, that that's a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, when we spoke on the phone, you had a quote, and I loved it. I know, reading about the family history and your business, Quick Cut. Your father didn't want to sell you the business at first, and I think it
Nope.
had to do with you being a woman. And you
Yep.
brought up a great point. You were like, I'm not going to take the words out of your mouth, but it was something about how can we push for equality, and then we.
Oh, you will never be treated equal as long as you want to be treated special.
This is something. If there's one thing, and there's a lot of things to get out of this video, if there's one thing America needs to hear, it's that line right there.
Mhm.
Because I feel like more people than ever want to be treated special. And
Yeah.
it's like,
There's not enough special to go around.
there's
I've been criticized for not. Um, I guess the word would be taking advantage. You know, are you a woman-owned business? Yeah, I'm a woman and I own a business, but no, I'm not a certified woman-owned business, and because I just, or a minority-owned business, or a veteran, I'm not going to bash veterans, believe me. My husband's one, and both my brothers, but it's like, how can, looking at it from a business perspective, how can businesses keep functioning if you've got to hire the person that maybe isn't the right person for your job,
Yeah.
but you have to hire that person? Um, and it's just a lot of things like that that just go on and on in my mind, that, let's go back to COVID. You had to close, you could stay open. You had to close, you could stay open. It's like, I've said for a long time that the government just needs to let businesses run their business. It's our business.
I agree.
It's not your business.
Yeah.
Stay out of my business.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're 100% right. We need less. I think a lot of folks now, they want a different shift. I think folks are getting really tired of the way not only, the state is going, but the way areas of this country are going. We got to get back to our roots, I think.
Yeah.
And it has nothing to do with not respecting people. It's actually giving more respect to people, I think, because we're saying we're all together.
Yeah.
You're not this. You're not labeled this.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just unite and figure out what we got to do to move forward.
And one of the things that they've said before in areas where a big company closes or something like that, they do say that lots of times a positive side effect of it is a lot of people take it upon themselves to start their own business.
Correct.
And if New York State was going to help anybody, that's who they should be helping. If you're a displaced worker, don't just try to find out where these people can get a check. Try to help them start a business. Yeah. Let other businesses help somebody start a business, because in our area here, tourism is important. We're 45 minutes from Cooperstown. We're 45 minutes from the Old Forge in the Adirondacks. We're 45 minutes from casinos. Where, I guess it makes us central New York.
Yeah.
People do come. Herkimer has the Herkimer diamond mines. People come from all over the world to go to the diamond mines.
Yeah.
And we've got campgrounds. We've got a lot to offer in this area, and I just hope that people don't get overly depressed about the whole Remington thing and try to move on and look at some brighter opportunities.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of a great note, almost to wrap it up, goes back to the strength of the people. I have no doubt from talking to folks in this community, yes, it's sad times now, but it's almost like it's going to be a rebirth. What that rebirth is going to look like, I don't think any of us know right now.
Right.
But don't underestimate the folks of Ilion. Don't underestimate the folks of Mohawk. And what we're going to do is come back up here, not only to do a more in-depth on Quick Cut and Mary, because she's got her own story and her own history with what she's doing, but we're going to start really going into small town America. My first initiative is going to be New York. That's where I'm from. And speaking with Mary, I never even knew how many manufacturers we had up here that are making an impact. And not only that we have up here, that have been up here for generations as well. And we got to get that story out.
Yep.
Is there anything that I didn't cover today? Anything that you want to reflect on personally or mention?
Well, the only thing that we briefly talked about on the phone, and your audience, I would ask them to look into SCOPE. SCOPE.
Yes, and tell them what that stands for.
It's you're gonna shooters. I think it's shooters committee on, I want to say, political education, but don't hold me to that. It's a Second Amendment organization in New York State.
And what I'll do, I'll put the link, even though I'm speaking with her live. When you folks see this video, I'll have a link and info.
Okay. Our area has, I think the chapters are by county.
Okay.
Not sure. Our my husband belongs, my brother belongs, and it's our local one is the Oneida Herkimer chapter. And they're for Second Amendment believers, because my belief in the Second Amendment is the next one's the First Amendment.
Correct.
You know,
Yeah.
it's it's. I don't really think it's about guns. I think it's about rights.
It is.
You know, and I think people need to be made more aware of it. And I think you're doing a great job.
I appreciate it. And,
Mhm.
you know, I'm really glad you brought that up.
Mhm.
I almost forgot that. And that is an extremely important piece, especially being a 2A channel. So I will put a link in there.
Mhm.
And Mary, I'd like to learn from you more about just getting more involved with that aspect so
Yeah.
I can educate also the folks. We do have a good amount of folks in the New York region to watch this. So
Right.
let's make that an initiative to really get more involved in that.
Great. Wonderful.
Perfect.
Mhm.
Well, it's so great to meet you.
Well, I'm glad
And
you came.
To discuss, the recent events here in Ilion.
that's awesome. I appreciate it. And folks watching, we're going to scan around this room.
Been well known throughout these 2 centuries as being a major employer in Herkimer County, where Ilion is located. And people have always wondered what will happen if this company ever leaves. And that day has now happened.
How did it all start back in the day?
It began way back in 1816 in a little forge about 2.5 miles south of the present day village of Ilion. A lifer at Remington thought he could make a much better gun than he could buy. So that's what he did. One day he made a gun, went down to his little forge, and made a gun, and all his friends and people in the area were impressed with it. And there you go. The business begins to take off. He gets more and more orders, to make guns, but he couldn't make them in that small stone forge in what today we call the Ilion Gorge. Back in the day, they referred to it as the Gulf.
Interesting.
But Ilion wasn't even a village yet. When he made his first gun, Ilion was not an incorporated village.
Wow.
What happened was when he realized he needed a bigger place, a factory to make these guns, he came about 2.5 miles north into what's now the village of Ilion. And at that time, and so you're now looking at the 1820s, the mid 1820s, right when the old Erie Canal had just been completed.
Wow.
And it went right through what's now the village of Ilion. And as I said, Ilion was not yet a village. But Remington is the reason why we have the village of Ilion, because when he came here and saw the canal going through this area, he's like, wow, what a great means of transportation, to transport the firearms. And so that's what he decided to do, build his factory near this canal. And the first building, the first date that's usually used when the first building went up is 1828.
Wow.
So when you look at it and where he built it, it's the same location as the factory today.
Amazing.
So you're looking at about 196 years. The factory has been in the same place, same location. And from there, the company just takes off. When he first came down here, there was just a handful of buildings here. In fact, on the Erie Canal list, in terms of transportation, since Ilion wasn't a village, they kind of just referred to it as Steele's Creek, because Steele's Creek is a little waterway that actually runs through the village today, and it was there back then as well. So it wasn't until 1852, so now you're looking at about 24 years of making guns in this little hamlet, all right? And it was decided to incorporate what had now become the size of what you would call a village. More and more people had come here. The employment levels had increased. And so, in 1852, Ilion had become an incorporated village. And it only gets better, for Remington. Time we get to 1861, we have a civil war in this country, and Remington was called upon to manufacture, firearms, all right, for the Union during the Civil War.
And that's really interesting. A lot of folks in modern day time, right? When you think of Remington, you think of an arms company, but I don't think a lot of people really appreciate. Number one, it was a New York-based company for 200 years, and then the history. When you think of the people of Ilion and the Remington family, they built guns, they helped build this village, but in reality, they helped really build America. And you're talking about things like the Civil War and other wars that they had a real impact on. If you want to dive a little bit deeper
it went
into
beyond the Civil War.
Yeah.
I will mention, though, within months after the Civil War started, about 3 or 4 months, Remington passed away, the founder of the company. The story goes that he was just stressed out from the demands of the war. And so he passed away in August of 1861, like I said, just a few months after the war began. And the factory, the company, actually had passed on to his 3 sons. And the company was already known as E. Remington and Sons at that point. His sons were already on board. It's just, their father was the main guy. And when he passed away, each of his 3 sons kind of took charge of various aspects of the company. The story goes that none of the 3 sons inherited all the qualities that their father had. In other words, his son Philo was considered to be the engineer. He knew how to make the firearms. Samuel was the big negotiator. He knew how to sell the firearms. And then the 3rd son, Eliphalet III, they like to just say he was good with numbers, and he was kind of the accounting man. And he would head the office, the business office of the company. So there you go. Each of the 3 sons inherited 3 qualities that their father had all of. Eliphalet, the founder, Eliphalet II, he was the engineer, he was the salesman, and he was also good at the bookkeeping, the accounting aspects. So there you go. You got 3 sons that are now in charge of the company, and the success of the company just continued to flourish. You get into the 1870s, and they often refer to the 1870s really as the golden age of Ilion.
Interesting.
Yes, because by that time, Remington was, getting contracts from other countries, government contracts from other countries. But getting back to the golden age, it also was a time when the Remingtons introduced more products, like the sewing machine, the typewriter. So yeah, not only did Remington feel the good times, the village of Ilion, felt the good times in the 1870s. What's interesting, though, much of the country, though, was going through a depression.
Mm.
But when you think of Ilion at that time, Ilion was a self-sufficient community. You didn't need to leave Ilion to get all the goods that you needed. Ilion had all the businesses that you could think of right here in town for the residents to go out and buy their goods. So, and with the reputation that Remington had, that also helped Ilion be insulated, I guess you could say, from this depression. It was called the Panic of 1873. And Ilion was pretty much insulated from that, really because of Remington and how they were devoted to what I call labor. They wanted to make sure that their employees, and many of the employees were Ilion residents, they made sure they were taken care of.
I'm really glad you brought that up. Reading about Remington over the years, and when it was owned by Remington family, much different passion and pride in their employees. And you see this in just modern day America, which is a little sad, but private equity and Wall Street and the big finance guys get involved, and you lose that personal touch. You lose that. I don't want to say companies don't respect their employees, but nowhere near the level that a family like Remington did back in their day. Do you want to talk about that a little bit, just about the way that they treated their employees and what they, maybe any special memories or things that you heard that were passed down over the years?
Yeah, you're spot on when you say that about how well they treated and respected their employees. I told you that the 1870s were a golden age. By the latter part of that decade, there were signs of trouble with the company. Some of the other products that they had manufactured, other than firearms, weren't quite doing as well, but they didn't unload those products. So Remington began to have a cash flow problem. And like I said, by the late 1870s and definitely into the early 1880s, with that cash flow problem, how do you pay your employees? Well, today, a simple solution for companies, you have to lay off people. Okay? The Remingtons didn't do that. This is what I mean by labor was dear to the Remingtons. They started to basically, and I'll put it in layman's terms here, print their own money, basically called company scrip. And that's how they were able to maintain the employment levels, and that's how people were able to survive.
Wow.
They would take this company scrip and they would go to the Ilion businesses to buy what they needed, and the Ilion businesses accepted this company scrip. Why? Remington had credibility. And because of the respect the company had, they basically had unlimited credit on top of having unlimited credibility. So I would like to show you the company scrip along with another document that shows that Remington had a cash flow problem when they had to sell bonds to be able to raise money for the company. So let's take a look at the Will Bremer's scrapbook. Will Bremer was a photographer in Ilion in the late 1800s and into the early 1900s. Well known throughout the village. And he kept a personal scrapbook, and you can see right here the company scrip and how it's got the Remington name on it, and how much someone is being paid. And it was this script that could be used as a really as money, in that you could go to stores and they would accept this. I also mentioned by the early 1880s, Remington had to um, deal with that cash flow problem even more. And to raise money, they sold bonds. And if you take a look at this bond from 1882, it was issued in Ilion in November of 1882. It's $1,000 bond. So the person that owned this bond, had to put up $1,000, and then of course it worked just like bonds work today. Even I'll use the U.S. Treasury bonds as an example. In this case, you put up $1,000, and then there's an interest rate. All right, you will get interest payments every 6 months and over a certain period of time. In this case, this bond, it has a 6% interest. So today's term, 6% is pretty darn good.
Yeah.
And obviously today we do things digitally, but back then you have the bond, and then down here are the interest payments. If you notice, they occur every 6 months. So it began, the bond was issued in November of 1882. So that means the first coupon that you see here, a $30 coupon, that would, because it's based on 6% interest. The first one came in May of 1883. And the bond matured in 1890. So as I was saying, the cash flow problem gets more serious. By the mid 1880s, the Remington factory is not busy like it had been the 2 previous decades. Or actually, you could go back to when the factory first opened here in what's now the Village of Ilion back in 1828. So in April of 1886, the Attorney General of New York hears about the financial problems of E. Remington and Sons. Company was still called E. Remington Sons even after the death of lifeblood Remington, the founder, as I call him. So he finds out about these financial problems, and he orders the company into what they called back then receivership. For all intents and purposes, it was a bankruptcy. Okay? And the court wanted to appoint 2 receivers to help stabilize the company and to figure out the company's finances. The 2 men that were appointed by the court were 2 Ilion men, Albert N. Russell and Addison Brill, both prominent men in the Village of Ilion. So the 2 spent a couple of months just trying to figure out, and organize the finances. But think about it. It's probably going to be very complicated to figure out the finances when a company was printing their own paper money for probably the better part of a decade, maybe a little less. And the 2 men, yes, wrote up a report, and the report tells us, yes, it was complicated. Would you like to take a look at that?
I would love to see that.
Okay.
Michael, thanks for pulling this out.
So this document is an original one. This came out of Albert N. Russell's personal scrapbook that we now have in our collection here at the Ilion Library. And he basically writes about their attempts at figuring out E. Remington and Sons finances and looking at their assets and liabilities. Addison Brill was also part of this report. And, throughout the document, they mentioned that it was not easy and it was, complicated. So the date on this is June 10th. So it took less than 2 months to figure this out. The report actually says Remington had an apparent surplus. Now we say apparent because once again, they were printing their own paper money. So how do you know for sure? That's why this was complicated. The company, though, was in some serious trouble. So for the next 2 years, these two receivers, Albert Russell, Addison Brill, keep the factory open. They're just, I like to use the word stabilize, all right, to keep it open. Well, the court concludes that, the Remington family can no longer run Remington.
Oh, wow.
The court made that decision to put the company up for auction. A man by the name of Marcellus Hartley, who owned an ammunition company that was based in Bridgeport, Connecticut. His offices, though, were in New York City, but he did have an ammunition factory in Bridgeport, Connecticut. So what was going through his mind? Wow, what a great opportunity to acquire a firearms manufacturer. What would go better with my ammunition company that I have?
Makes sense.
Yes. So that's what he was interested in here. He's interested in, well, what I like to say, he'd like to corner the gun market. He also had a relationship, a business relationship with Winchester Firearms. And so in 1888, Marcellus Hartley and Winchester, they start colluding, and they'd go behind closed doors and have their discussions. And once again, Marcellus Hartley and Winchester start colluding. When they came to Ilion on the day of the auction, they were meeting behind closed doors. There were many witnesses that saw this. On top of that, they had a little scheme. Somebody from New York City was claiming that Remington owed an enormous amount of money. So people started backing out. There was even some Ilion backers that were looking at acquiring the company. But then they too just were a little leery. And I'm hearing this news, should we go and acquire this? Not only that, some politicians got involved in this as well, with Marcellus and Winchester. And there was some talk among these politicians with these two. Well, the auction ends. Marcellus Hartley and Winchester, along with this very secretive, not many people knew about this group of businessmen from Chicago that were called a Chicago Syndicate in the Ilion Citizen newspaper. Yes, they were called the Chicago Syndicate that were part of this.
Sounds a little...
Yes, a little shady.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You're taking now a company away from a family that had owned it since 1816. Even though his business tactics were rather ruthless, he did keep the factory in Ilion, unlike what's happened today.
It's really amazing history, and it shows too the strength of the people from Ilion, right? Because not only are they going through what they're going through today, but over the years, there's been a lot of ups and downs, and this village has really, the people have really risen to the occasion and overcome, whether it's economic,
Yes.
whatever challenges.
You can see, not many people know about that 1886 receivership or bankruptcy, but Ilion persevered. When I look at today, I kind of look at 1993 was the beginning of the end, because now we're entering the private investment firm that begins to own Remington. And I like to say that private investment firms, they don't have a vested interest in this case, Remington. And I want to say it's under Cerberus that we start to see some really nasty tactics, almost maybe even worse than Marcellus Hartley back from the late 1800s. In fact, it was so nasty, it's very complicated. By 2018, Remington was heavily in debt. And they filed bankruptcy for the second time in their company's history. And then they file again in 2020, just 2 years after that. Why? How? It was almost like there was Cerberus found a loophole in the system. What they basically did was, it wasn't Remington that accumulated this debt. It was Cerberus. And they were able to saddle, and I like to use that word, saddle, the debt onto Remington, since they basically owned it. And a lot of times what these investment firms do, they create a holding company.
Yeah.
All right. And so really Cerberus isn't really looked at. Yes, they're the owner, but their name wasn't really attached to Remington, anymore. There was a group called the Freedom Group, and then you had the Remington Outdoor Group. So there were a couple of names that were attached to our local, Remington company, and you rarely heard the Cerberus name anymore. So what happened was this debt was saddled onto Remington. I believe it was somewhere in 700, 800 million range. I believe it was. Ridiculous. Don't quote me on that, but it was high. It was substantial, and that's what led to these bankruptcy filings. And then after the second bankruptcy filing, once again, the courts ordered the company to go up for auction. I go, this isn't good. And then within a few short months or within a year, they moved their headquarters to Georgia. Yeah. And that wasn't a good sign. And then just 2 years later, towards the end of 2023, they announced that they're pulling out of Ilion. And after 208 years of making guns in this area, 196 in the same location. The company had just closed their doors earlier this week on March 4th.
Personally, that you want to say to the folks out there?
Well, the only thing I can say is time will tell as to what happens with this factory that has about 1 million square feet.
Yeah, it sits on 34 acres.
I was just going to say between 30 and 40 acres. Yeah. Time will tell. I like to be optimistic, but we have to look at reality. The population continues to dwindle. I don't know what to say other than time will tell. I wish I could be, 100% positive.
Yeah.
But it's difficult given the climate out there, the business climate, especially here in New York, and the attitudes of some of these firms. Well, I'm just going to say it, greedy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, time will tell.
Well, like I said, I mean, it's become personal for me too. I'm going to pray for the town, try to keep a positive attitude, but you're right. I mean, reality is reality, and I think time will tell. And with that being said, I'd like to continue covering this story down the road, and let the folks know, where Ilion is 6 months from now, maybe 5 years from now. And this is a village, like I said, up, central New York. I'm used to saying upstate New York, but all you folks out there, like I said, you think of New York, you think of New York City, you think of Wall Street, but you really don't get a feel of the hardworking, blue collar folks that put their livelihood into a company like Remington, and more so into what we call the United States of America. So, Michael, I really appreciate your time today.
Well, thank you for having me. I enjoyed this Remington history.
You know, this was definitely different than anything I've done, and really meaningful, really touching. There's one note that I do want to leave on, and that's the community of Ilion. Not only are they known for their history with Remington for 208 years, but they're really known for their resiliency to economic challenges over the years and how these folks rise up and always make something with their lives and are always positive and hardworking, blue-collared Americans. And that's what it's about. So while this story is on Remington, it's equally just as important to me as we focus on the village of Ilion and these small communities. And while this isn't middle America, like we said with the mayor, this is the heart of America. I mean, this is what this country was built on. It was built on, you know, the industrial factories, the big companies that have employed thousands and thousands of people. And those thousands of people are your hardworking American citizens, you know, that live in these rural communities. So, folks, while this one does sting, this community is going to bounce back better than ever. We're going to come back up here. We're going to do a follow-up in about 6 months, see how things have changed. And then we'll also keep track of, you know, what the mayor, like he was saying, what folks are, what the big plans are for the future when it comes to Ilion, New York. You know, once again, this factory sits on 34 acres, over 1 million square feet. So it'll be interesting to see if they end up keeping the factory intact and use it for other businesses, or if this, unfortunately, is something that they're going to look to possibly, you know, tear down. And I hate using those words, but regardless, this community is going to come out on top. I know it. New Yorkers always come out on top, but more importantly, America always comes out on top.